Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 17 of History's Greatest Idiots, the show in which we take you back through all of history and find you some truly wonderful examples of human stupidity, mistakes, and idiocy, and then give you lessons so that you can learn from them, never repeat those mistakes again. But who are we kidding? We're humans. We like mistakes. In fact, so much so that it can almost become an addiction, which we will talk about with one of our people later on. But joining me as ever is my amazing co-host and future co-creator of something very interesting that we both got on the horizon. Derek, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. Just been hanging out and relaxing, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'm retired, only not.
Oh, man. I think it sounds weird because I do enjoy work and I enjoy creative work and I do the stuff we do, but I think I would like to be at a stage where I can get paid the most amount of money for doing as little amount as work. I mean, that might be a generational thing where people say, oh, fucking millennials, no growth or whatever. But like, I feel like I could put in maximum effort for a small amount of time and get maximum output. You know, that's my ideal scenario. That's as close as I can get to retirement, I think, at this stage.
I think if I could get to the point where I was voice acting and writing and audio editing as my job,
yeah,
I don't have a problem working 16 hours a day, and it feels like I'm retired. So
yeah, exactly. And then, like, you know, I feel there's something about the drudgery potentially of a 9 to 5 where you're sort of like, I'm doing this and I'm making good money, but like, I don't really feel it. I mean, I know multiple examples from like my life, people I knew who were just like, I'm here to collect a paycheck. And I think at a certain point in your life, you decide, right, that's not for me anymore. And, you know, I'm very lucky that I have a great number of passions in the side projects and main job that I do. Doesn't earn me a huge amount of money, but it earns me enough so that I can pay a mortgage and just about afford food. Probably not heating, given
just
what's
about
going on in the UK. Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, yeah, the UK is facing £4,000 a year fuel bills right now, which is just for Americans, that's like $4,500 a year. How much do you guys pay for like heating and gas over there for like a typical family home?
Well, see, we don't necessarily have gas everywhere here.
Right,
So like
sure.
I have all electric.
Right, okay.
So heat and air.
Okay.
But through the summer, my air conditioning bill, my electric bill in the summer is around $325 a month.
Oh shit. So so for 4 months of the year, that's quite a fair chunk of change right there.
Yeah.
That's like nearly $1,300.
I think you just kind of get used to that in Arizona. I don't know. They've slowly raised everything up so damn high on me. Well, I wasn't paying attention that now I'm like, God, I haven't been on vacation in like 3 years. How did I used to have money to do that shit?
Because we weren't being squeezed so tightly by mega corporations. Yeah, we've got a thing in the UK at the moment. I mean, I'm in a situation where I've done a significant amount of improvements. This is why I have no money. I've done a lot of work on my house. You know, we bought the thing, we completely redecorated it, gutted it, and then we put in triple glazed windows, and then we put in a new boiler, and then we put in new radiators in every single room. And we're like, we're going to be nice and toasty in the winter. And then the fuel bills have just like gone up by 80%. So we're at the stage now where I'm saying to my wife, maybe we take out a loan and buy a log burner for the living room, which would heat up the rooms upstairs. And then we can put the radiators down, because it's like, in the long run, it would be cheaper to buy and install a log burner and buy wood and chop that up than pay like £400 a month for heating and gas and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think about something like £190 worth of logs in this country will pretty much see you through the winter. So maybe a little bit more. So, you know, your fuel bills will be a lot less. And, you know, with say a £5,000 outlay, thing pays for itself in like a couple of years. So
yeah. I want to get all on wind and solar and then just run electric heat.
Yeah, I'm in a similar way. The thing is, the company we go for our energy bills are entirely carbon neutral. So all of their stuff is renewable energy and they're carbon neutral. The problem is that every electricity company in this country has their price tied to the gas companies. So they're the ones that
Oh.
dictate the price of electricity. So people who, energy companies that don't use gas are being screwed over because they have to do certain aspects of their work the way, you know. So anyway, we won't get into the politics of the Western Hemisphere's living crisis at the moment, but yeah, it's not a great situation with winter around the corner. So if anyone wants to come out, hang out in my house, it'll be reasonably toasty, and I won't even charge you. You can come out, spend a few hours, we'll have a chat, and then you can go home, and you'll have saved yourself a little bit on your energy bills, maybe a few quid. Yeah, now that we've got to that, we've also got another thing on the horizon. We don't want to announce it just yet, but myself and Derek are amongst a group of various artists and creators who are working on a series that involves a lot of people who have been involved in the analog horror space. So that's things like the Mandela Catalog and the Walton Files, and obviously the Monument Mythos with my connection, and a bunch of other stuff. And you know, there's something on the horizon, and it's very exciting. So.
It seems like it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see if I can figure it out.
I think so. I think the great thing is that the whole point of the project is that it gives anyone, and I will be including multiple people, you know, multiple creators and non-creators, like giving them an opportunity in a forum to tell stories that they've always wanted to tell. A one-off story, if you can kind of express it, then you can create it with our group of people, and then we kind of split the profits evenly. But basically, it's an opportunity to tell any story you've ever wanted to tell in an appropriate format. So really, it's about the idea, not necessarily about like if it fits into this thing or that thing. As long as it's a good idea, it'll fit. Anyway,
taking it out of the boxes.
Yes. No. Well, there are boxes, but no structured boxes. Anyway. So anyway, now that we've covered that, let's get back to the main thing at hand. Derek, who is your idiot for this episode?
Well, see, we were just talking about being part of something bigger than ourselves. And I think it's safe to say that at one point in all of our lives, we find ourselves wanting to belong to something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Some people go to military service, other people join religions and cults. And this dude he gets involved with the mafia. Because why not?
Why not? Yeah. It's a cult with a really good menu with all the Italian food. So there you go.
There you go. I never looked at it that way, but yeah. That is legit explanation for the mafia. A cult with good food.
Yeah. Cult with great food. All those meatballs and pasta dishes. Oh my god, delicious.
So anyway, this dude's associated with the Chicago outfit. And I say he's associated because he was never a fully made member.
Right.
And I'll dive
into
why.
Because of the Bloodlines thing? Yeah, okay.
Sorry. It wasn't Bloodlines.
Oh, that's interesting. Usually that's the thing, right?
Usually, Irish or Jewish heritage mixed in there, and then they can't be made. You know, if everything I learned from watching Goodfellas and Casino is how
exactly
it works.
What I was going off. I'm going off Scorsese films. I don't mind.
It's the only. I just assume that's how it is.
Yeah,
seems fair. Anyway,
yeah, exactly.
So the Chicago outfit is also known as the Outfit, the Chicago Mafia, the Chicago Mob, the Chicago Crime Family, Southside Gang, or the Organization. Right. It started in 1910 and might still operate today. Maybe, probably not. Maybe, I don't know. But the guy that I'm focusing on is considered by at least one FBI agent and authority on the source as one of the worst torture murderers in the history of the United States.
Oh,
so deranged and sadistic that even the mob didn't want to have him as a full member, but they still used him for loan sharking and enforcement, and of course, torture and murder of people when it needed to get done. And then they gave him a really cool nickname, Mad Sam. So
nice.
Here we go. He's born Samuel DeStefano Jr. in Strader, Illinois on September 13th, 1909. Like people involved with the mafia at the time, his parents were Italian immigrants, and shortly after Sam's birth, his father moved the family out to Herring, Illinois, where he was a coal miner. They were only there briefly because labor-related turmoil popped up around the Herring Massacre, which was a coal miner strike that led to 3 miners and 20 non-union miners being killed, which included strike breakers and the superintendent of the mine.
Wow.
So early on, kids exposed to like insane amounts of violence pretty close to him. His dad decides then to move him back to Chicago's Little Italy. And it's not sure if his father was involved with the Chicago outfit or not, or if he just kind of was associated, but he ended up dying of natural causes of old age, running a grocery store and doing real estate. But his son, Samuel Jr., Mad Sam, didn't go that way. He went the less legitimate way. And there's not a lot known about his early life. But the earliest records are just before his 17th birthday on September 12th, 1926, when he was arrested by the Chicago police as a fugitive and then returned to Niles, Illinois, because he had broken out of jail there. I don't know why he was in jail, but he was in jail and he got out and he ran away and got arrested. And that's the first real records of him outside of birth records.
Wow.
He started to get involved with gang activity in the summer of 1927 when a whole bunch of West Side gang members showed up and threatened violence and craziness against a police sergeant that had arrested Sam and his friend.
Wow. Normally, you'd think that they'd... I feel like all of the depictions of the mob I've seen, that they deal with things involving the police a little bit more delicately than that. And they're usually a little bit like either the police are in their pocket or they're like, come on, he's a good guy, go lighten him, blah, blah. But no, straight up threatening police.
Right. And it was prior to like the more civilized mafia,
right?
Or Cosa Nostra.
Sure,
this is 27. So it was when they were like bootlegger gangs. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And Capone actually brings this dude into the Chicago outfit because Al Capone is the one that ran that.
Of course.
In November of 1927, Chicago police arrested Sam again and another gang member on the charges of kidnapping and rape of a 17-year-old girl.
Oh, shit.
Now, he was found guilty of the rape, but was only sentenced to 3 years because apparently the police arrived before he actually raped her, which is fucked up. Yeah, so they stopped him. I don't know. It seems like he got charged with the crime because he intended to commit it.
Oh.
Either way, he's a dick and he deserved it. But he only got 3 years.
But so it was an intent to...
essentially, yeah.
I mean, that would be a very difficult thing to prove, I guess, in those days, like without like logs or documentation, I guess. Like,
no DNA back in the day, but
they just happen to be that. That's okay. Whole minefield there, but wow, that's really interesting.
Right, and he's 18, almost 19 at the time.
All right.
So I don't know. He spends 3 years in jail, and in 1930, when he gets let out, he joins up with the infamous 42 gang. That's the gang that brought us characters like Salvatore Giancana, who may or may not have been involved with the death of JFK.
Yeah, that's the big rumor with that one.
Now, it was actually, like I said, Al Capone's bootlegging and gambling operation that brought Sam, the Mad Sam DeStefano, into association with the outfit. They hired that 42 gang to serve as beer runners and fences for various stolen goods and burglaries that they were involved with, and kind of used them like a farm team, I guess.
Okay.
They were calling people up from that gang and making them made men. Not this guy, but others.
Yes.
So in 1932, Sam was shot and wounded by police during a grocery store robbery, probably not his dad's. And the only reason they know he was shot is because he showed up later to a Chicago hospital on the west side with bullet wounds and was like, I don't know where they came from.
It fell in my leg. These things happen.
In 1933, he got his first taste of the big time when he was convicted in connection with a Wisconsin bank robbery, and the judge sentenced him to 40 years.
Oh, shit.
So he could have been done right there, but he wasn't, because after only 11 years, the Wisconsin governor let him out. And after he was released, he got a job at a printing plant for some reason.
Okay.
Where They caught his ass making counterfeit sugar ration stamps and sent his ass back to prison.
Oh my God. Of all the things to be caught forging, sugar rations. Holy shit.
I mean, this is kind of into the Great Depression now. The
Sure.
30s. Well, I guess
Yeah, yeah,
11
well
years
into-
from the 30s, so 40. So
Oh,
it's
wow,
World
okay.
War II.
Yeah, yeah. So it's rationing to do with that. Yeah, I know you guys also had rationing. It's a big thing over in this country. The rationing in World War II. People were given very small amounts, and there was a whole campaign about dig for victory. So people just basically turned whatever small backyards they had, or sometimes like no bigger than my third bedroom. They just basically covered it in soil and grew as many plants as they could.
Yeah.
My
We might
grandmother
have
tells
to
me
do that
stories
soon.
about having meat once a week for basically like 12, 13 years.
Not the
And it
way
was
you
like,
want to become a vegetarian.
no, exactly. It was forcible vegetarianism. But yeah, one of her favorite meals was boiled onion with melted cheese on top.
Ew.
Yeah, that's how bad the rationing got.
That's tough.
Yeah,
I'm going
that
to
was
starve
tough.
to death if we have to do that again.
Yeah,
I
pretty
hope
much.
no
Me
war
too.
breaks out.
Yeah, exactly. Just if you're gonna break out war, give us all MSG and we'll be fine. All right. So flavor enhancer. That's what we need. So sorry, continue with the
Anyway,
rationing
so
thing.
this guy gets busted for counterfeit sugar ration stamps and goes back to prison. They send him to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary.
Oh,
And that's where he gets even tighter with outfit members who help him upon his release get a job in civil service.
what?
As a garbage dump foreman.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, exactly. When you
Not
said
quite
civil
a
service, I was immediately like, oh, like government advisory? Really? This guy? Like, oh no, he's like a garbage guy. He's like the leader of the group. Okay, that's fine. But still connections with the mob there. With
Yep.
the unions and stuff, for sure.
And it's the early workings of how that's going to come out. And by the 1950s, Sam became one of the most well-known political fixers in Chicago.
Shit.
He was able to set it up pretty quick because apparently he had cash left over from the Wisconsin bank robbery somehow stashed away, which is pretty
Buried in the
dope, I
field.
guess. So
Nice.
he used that to invest into Chicago real estate, where he bought a 24-suite apartment building.
Ooh.
And he used that rent money to bribe and pay off local police and politicians and officials to get things done. So
Right. Okay.
from there, he becomes the most successful Chicago fixer, and he's bribing judges and law enforcement. And he bragged that there wasn't any case that he couldn't fix. Allegedly, he once fixed a murder case for $20,000.
That's a lot of money back then. My God.
He's making massive amounts of money on his loan sharking and fixing. And it opened him up to kind of a weird sort of situation where he would buy other people's debts to fix their problems, and they end up owing him a favor to fix it. And then he puts them on the juice. It actually comes around with the high VIG interest.
Yeah. Right.
And
so they've got no other option but to do what he says.
And then, exactly. And by the 60s, he was like the outfit's head loan shark. And his victims, I say victims because you'll see, they included politicians, lawyers, and other small-time criminals. And he charged them 20 to 25% a week on their debt. And he started to take on high-risk debtors like businessmen who had already defaulted on loans with regular organizations or drug addicts. And then he would use them once they became delinquent to teach others a lesson to pay. So
right. Yeah.
He actually, I guess, looked forward to dealing with the delinquents, and he would bring them to a soundproof torture chamber that he built in his basement.
Jeez.
Where like other gangsters describe him as sadistic and actually foaming at the mouth while torturing his victims. And from time to time, he would kill debtors that owed him small sums so that the people that owed him a whole bunch of money would pay.
Wow, that's a similar tactic to the Orson Welles hire an extra actor so that on the first day of filming you can fire them so that everyone knows you're the boss technique.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was an old tactic in old Hollywood where someone would usually get fired in the first couple of days, like really publicly. So on the
right.
set, they'd be like, "Oh my, what are you going to do? Fire me? Yeah, you're goddamn right. I'm going to fire you." And then they get fired and like, get out that fuck out. And they security drag them out. And all this. It's all an act to show that the director was the leader and the auteur, and you can't fuck with the director and do what he says and stay on budget and let's keep on time. This is a little bit of an extreme version of that. I think. Holy shit.
Yeah, he just killed him.
Yeah, just straight
publicly,
up,
kind of. And you'd think, oh shit, well, he's going to go back to prison pretty quick, right?
He's got everyone in his pocket.
Well, that, and he also had a really unusual practice where he would make them give him gifts, provide them with presents, like a gold watch with his name engraved on the back. So if they ever complained to the police that he was going to do something to him, he could use the watch or the gifts as proof of how close he was with him and why he would never harm him.
Yeah, that's actually very smart.
Yeah.
Evil, but very, very smart. Man.
He's a straight up sociopath.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jesus.
Under normal circumstances, even the outfit would have distanced himself from DeStefano for his sadistic, irrational behavior, but he earned a lot of money for him. He was such a successful earner that even Giancana and Tony Accardo invested some of their own money in his loan sharking operations. So he had high up people backing him, but not that much.
Yeah, he's useful, but he's never going to be one of us because he's too dangerous to be one of us, and eventually he's going to get caught, sort of thinking, I'd imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
In November 1963, he had a violent argument with Leo Foreman, who was a real estate agent at one of his he was a real estate agent and one of his juice collectors,
right?
His loan collectors.
Sure.
Apparently, Sam was physically ejected from Foreman's office, and then Foreman went into hiding.
Wow.
Later on, DeStefano and you might know this name, Anthony Spilatro.
Vaguely, yeah.
That's the guy that was played by Joe Pesci in Casino.
Oh shit!
The hole in the wall.
Okay,
game.
Yeah, definitely recognize that name now. Wow, he met quite the violent end. Jesus.
Yes. Well, this whole crew, and because Anthony Spilatro was actually brought in by Mad Sam DeStefano into the mix.
Right.
Anyway, so they meet up with Foreman and tell him that Sam wants to let bygones be bygones and everything's going to be okay. So Leo Foreman's lured to Sam's brother's house and they whack him.
Yeah, I don't know why you ever thought that was going to be all right. Yeah, come over to my brother's house. We'll have some wine. We'll chat. Well, everything will be fine. Like, if you know anything about mafia culture, even at the time, I think most people would have spotted the trap a mile away, right? Jesus.
I think the nicer they are to you, the more nervous I would be.
Yes, exactly.
So in another incident with a collector of his, Peter Capoletti, he fled Chicago with $25,000 from a loan shark or from one of the victims. And then Sam had his people locate him in Wisconsin and bring him back to Chicago, where he chained him to a radiator and tortured him for 3 days.
Jesus.
And while a banquet was going on in the other room, this Capoletti's secretly being tortured in the back of that restaurant, saying stuff like, "Kill me, please, I'm on fire." And DeStefano replies, "Then we need to put out the fire," and has him dragged out into the restaurant in the banquet area, into the dining area, and forces the man's family to urinate on him.
What the fuck?
The family then quickly paid back the loan or the stolen money that Peter had absconded with.
Jesus.
So that's the type of dude that Sam DeStefano was. And in 1965, he was convicted of conspiracy and sentenced to 3 to 5 years in prison. On February 2nd, 1972, he was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for threatening the life of a witness.
Right.
and then convicted for that Leo Foreman murder.
Wow. Okay.
And
that's
in later in 1972, he's indicted on federal firearms charges, and stuff starts going batshit in a way.
Yeah.
He started to have really bizarre behavior, and he demanded to represent himself in court. He was dressed in pajamas, shouting through bullhorns, just rambling incoherently.
So he's trying to get an insanity defense thing going. Yeah.
And then he's doing it at his trials and at his court appearances, and the outfit bosses are like, well, shit.
Yeah.
We just thought he was violent. Turns out he's batshit.
He's absolutely insane. Yeah.
So they were worried that he was going to jeopardize their defense and the defenses of some of his other crews. And in a secret meeting of the Chicago bosses, they gave his own crew permission to kill him. On April 14th, 1973, he met with his brother and Anthony Spilatro in the garage of a neighborhood home, where when they entered the room, he turned around and was shot twice with a shotgun. It hit him in the chest and tore off part of his left arm. He was killed immediately. Sorry.
Wow.
Instantly. That's the word I was looking for. And nobody was ever charged with that murder.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. They probably cleaned that scene up really carefully, or set it on fire.
Yeah, and then had his family put it out with their urine.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, just the normal way you do. Yeah.
So not so much an idiot, just a crazy sociopath, psychopathic killer.
Yeah. Holy shit.
Yeah. And that is Mad Sam DeStefano.
Mad Sam DeStefano. It reminds me a little bit, and you do, I mean, obviously, anyone who's involved in murder for hire, organized murder, you know, crime is a whole thing, but like murder for an organization takes a very specific personality, you know, and you know, people who kill someone, not that I know too many, but like people, you know, examples from the real world. Someone like Scott Hall, I go back to wrestlers all the time. Scott Hall was a nightclub bouncer. Guy shows up to nightclub for revenge, for being ejected with a gun. Scott Hall wrestles into the ground, wrestles the gun away from him. The gun goes off. Guy dies. And Scott Hall's rest of his life is just, you know, series of alcohol and drug related issues, you know, spotted with his wrestling career. So, you know, a murder or a killing, and it definitely wasn't murder because he was defending himself and the people outside the nightclub. Like it changes people, you know, when something like that happens. But you look at the history of the mafia, and there are a few examples in there, particularly famous examples. This guy, I was thinking also about the Hitman. What was his name? The Iceman?
The Ice Pick?
Ice Pick, yeah. What was his name? They made a film about him with the really tall actor, Michael Shannon. Yeah, and they just pulled up, and it's a homeless person in an alley, and they were like, just go and kill that guy. And he's like, really? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, there's like mafia hitmen. There's a very specific thing. They're not considered in the same light as like psychopaths. So you kind of your Richard Dahmer, you know, all of these kind of.
It's business.
Yeah, it's like it's for some reason it seems better to mainstream society because it's part of the mafia thing. But you know, these people are psychopaths. There's no two ways about it. They just happen to be sanctioned by this weird body that is, you know, trying to make as much money as possible and exploit people. Yeah, he kind of, I mean, it's hard to judge him on an idiotic scale, more of a kind of a really nasty human being scale, because that's what he was. He was a psychopath, sociopath, a murderer, and probably had severe mental health or mental illness issues, really, because like, I mean, that whole defense thing, pajamas, I'm sure the majority of it was an act, but there's an element of truth in that, and he is unhinged, yet somehow he still managed to make all that money. So for the murders, yeah, you can't go low with this because he killed a lot of people, and he was like sadistic in the way that some of these people were tortured and killed and stuff. So I've got to go like 88 with that, purely based on the level of the violence. I wouldn't really say he was like mass murder level, but certainly like the lack of conscious in his actions.
Icky murders.
Yeah, they were really gross.
Yeah.
And the exploitation and stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to give him an 88 because, I mean, as glamorous as films and history has made the mafia look, there is so much darkness there.
It's so violent. And I mean, I guess in a way, keeping that away from the public, but they don't really, because if they did, you wouldn't know that shit happened.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are examples in history where violence has been covered up so effectively that the truth doesn't come out for decades or centuries, but the mafia are not very good at operating in the shadows because there are still like assassinations and stuff that people are like, oh, that is a really suspicious death. And, it does still happen to this day. There are still underworld figures who will do stuff like that. Gang warfare. There's a reason we call it gang warfare, because that shit spills out onto the streets.
Yes.
And people get hurt in the crossfire.
God, even like Sammy the Bull came out here and went back to his old ways and started getting involved with like gang members like in the Phoenix area. So
yeah, I mean, I can tell you a story, multiple stories from the West Midlands of England. Like there was a nightclub I used to frequent when I was in university here with some of my friends, and we went to this nightclub and it was called Decadence. And it was very and it was down one of these streets where like it was either a takeaway or an adult bookstore. So it was like I think they owned a lot of the stuff on the block. And the nightclub, you went in and it was just immaculately laid out, really interesting designs. There were like grottos and different lighting areas, and the drink was incredible. The alcohol was suspiciously cheap.
Fell off a truck.
It fell off a truck, and like weird stuff would happen in there. Like one of my friends got her phone stolen, but like literally like that, like it was gone within about 10 seconds. And she called it and someone answered, and it was definitely still inside the bar. And then there was like someone got offed behind the nightclub. In quite execution style. And as a result of that, the police raided it a few months later and shut it down. And they found like masses of cash, like in the walls, just random shit like that, just dodgy stuff. And,
it's not on the up and up when you keep your cash in the walls.
Yeah, exactly. I swear it's just insulation. So yeah.
Hi from Sweden.
Verbery. So hi from Sweden. Very. How do loan sharks keep their paperwork from getting soggy in the water? That's a good joke, Toasterzoid. Very nicely done.
Do they keep good paperwork?
I'd imagine they don't. I'd imagine it's like written on the back of their hand and then washed off. Or I'd imagine those ledgers are very carefully stored. But yeah, I think organized crime, I mean, obviously it has influenced society in multiple different ways. Some good. Like, it's uncovered like corrupt officials and stuff sometimes because they've squealed. Told the world about this politician or this, whatever it might be, Tammany Hall official. But yeah, throughout history, the large effect of organized crime has been like 99% negative.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say that.
And I know he's not like a super duper idiot, but I just wanted to talk about a mobster. So
yeah, I think it's sometimes because I mean we're doing history's greatest idiots, and sometimes we do talk about actual idiots, but sometimes we find characters who are so interesting that actually we kind of need to cover them, even if they're more on the evil side of things or on the unlucky side of things or really lucky side of things. So it's also about the characters and actually getting on to my person. My person is definitely a character and definitely an idiot, but also kind of a genius. And we'll go into that now. I'd like to tell you, we're going back into sports. I do sometimes cover some obscure sports figures, which probably don't always appeal to my non-English or European audience. But I would like to tell you the life story of Paul Gaza Gascoigne, football's idiot savant. English is like my third language, excuse the spelling. Verbally, you're doing really great. Thank you for joining us. So Paul John Gascoigne, who most people know simply as Gaza, was born in Gateshead, County Durham, which is over the river from Newcastle. So it's like the northeast of England. He was born on the 27th of May, 1967. So the northeast of England, things you should know about that, it's bitterly cold up there because it's basically on the border with Scotland. There haven't been many jobs for a very long time because that part of the world, they used to build a lot of ships, they used to do coal mining, and Thatcher destroyed both of those industries. So fuck you, Margaret Thatcher. Very glad you're burning in hell. But yeah, I don't like the woman.
That's fair.
She decimated the employment prospects of generations of people in the northeast, and she is not popular up there, or the Tories aren't as well. So the people themselves in the northeast, because I went to university in Newcastle. My first university degree is from Newcastle. The people are beautiful and wonderful and warm. They're just some of the most friendly people that you will sit down on like a bus, and they'll just say, "Oh, how are you doing, mate? Are you all right? Like, how's your day been?" and stuff. And they're just the friendliest people.
Okay.
A lot of life stuff up there. Even to this day, actually, a lot of real estate and food and activities, very, very cheap up there. It's a very cheap part of the world in terms of cost of living, and really beautiful countryside. So places like County Durham, Northumberland, which features very heavily in English history, especially like pre-invasion by the Normans. Really beautiful countryside. So yeah, Northumberland was like the seat of power back in the day before John the what's his name? Thingy the bastard.
What episode was that?
The Conqueror. Yeah. So what's that?
We did him, right? You did.
We did John. Yes, we did do John, but he was a little bit after Henry the Conqueror.
Okay.
William the Conqueror. I always get that mixed up. Sorry. So yeah, the Northeast, really beautiful place. Also, kind of amazing and insane nightclub, nightlife stuff there. So if you go out in the town in Newcastle, something will happen. It might not be good. It might not be bad, but something will happen.
Something will happen.
Something will happen. It'll change your life, either for the good or the bad. And that's every weekend.
Dude,
anyway,
there you go. There is the new slogan for them for their tourism.
Yeah,
Newcastle. Something will happen.
It might not be good, but something will happen. So back to Paul Gascoigne. His father, John, 1946 to 2018, was a Horde Carrier. And I should tell you all that a Horde Carrier is someone who would put stacks of like 20 to 30 bricks on like a wooden board in a V shape. So they'd have a V shape and they'd slide the bricks on and pile them up. And then that V-shaped wooden thing would be attached to a metal pole. And they put the pole over their shoulder and they'd carry these bricks to the top of a construction site or walk up a scaffold. I know. It's so stupid. You have pulleys. Pulleys have been a thing for hundreds of years. Fucking use them. But no, they had men walking up ladders with like, I don't know, maybe like 200 pounds worth of bricks on their back.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So
that's a job.
That's a fucking hard job right there. And of course, again, northeast. So it's usually either raining or snowing or sleeting or like approaching freezing. So yeah, fucking hard working people up there. And his mother, Carol, worked in a factory. So basically like real salt of the earth people up there. He was named Paul John Gascoigne in tribute to Paul McCartney and John Lennon of the Beatles because his dad was a huge Beatles fan.
Nice.
He attended Brecon Beds Junior High School and then Heathfield Senior High School, both in the Lowfell area of Gateshead. He was noticed by football scouts while playing for Gateshead Boys, though failed to impress in a trial at Ipswich Town, which is actually in the West Country. And at the time, Ipswich Town were a very, very big club. They're not so much now, but yeah, they were a big thing, big part of the scene at the time. Further trials at Middlesbrough and Southampton also proved unsuccessful before the team he supported, Newcastle United, signed him as a schoolboy in 1980. Former Ipswich and Newcastle scout Charlie Woods has claimed Ipswich were keen on signing Gascoigne, but once Newcastle got wind, they quickly signed him up, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to go and play for my childhood club," you know. So
that seems legit.
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward. It was he loved his club and he wanted to play for them. Didn't get paid much, but we'll get to that now. Gascoigne frequently got into trouble with his friend. You're going to hear a lot about this guy, Jimmy. his mate's name was Jimmy Five Bellies Gardner. So
Five bellies.
5 bellies because he was so big.
Okay.
The dude could eat. And Newcastle chairman Sam Seymour Jr. described Gascoigne as George Best without brains, which is a fairly accurate description. George Best is considered like maybe top 5 most skillful players in football history. But he also had a huge drinking problem. But George Best was kind of cultured. He was the first like mega star in football. Like even before Pele became a big thing in the States, George Best was like a bit like the Beatles. Like he was a bit sexy. Women wanted him. He was very skillful. He was a bit of a playboy. Now that shit did not exist before George Best came along. Unfortunately, Gascoigne was like that, only without any of the culture. And he was just like a lout, like a log lout. But also, George Best was kind of skillful, very like swift and intelligent. Gascoigne was that, but he was also incredibly physically aggressive.
Okay.
Like, so imagine like the most skillful player you can think of, who will also headbutt someone.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of a perfect footballer. Until Gascoigne was successful on the football field, his childhood was marked by instability and tragedy. Initially, his family lived in a single upstairs room in a council house with a shared bathroom and moved several times during his early life, which, you know, in the Northeast, that's not a good life. You know, more than 4 people in a room. And you have to share the bathroom with other people. That's really bad.
Probably drafty and cold.
Oh yeah, like single pane windows, really, really cold. I was talking to my dad the other night, and he was like, "Just want to remind you that back in my day, we used to have condensation on the inside of the windows when we woke up in the morning." I was like, "Yes, yeah, I know. This country should really have moved on for the last 60, 70 years, but apparently we haven't." When he was 10, Gascoigne witnessed the death of Stephen Spraggan, a friend's younger brother, who was killed in a traffic collision in front of him.
Ouch. Yeah, that'll mess you up.
That will mess you up. And around this time, his father began to experience quite violent seizures. So his father
be
basically,
scary too.
yeah, and like his dad had to stop working. His mum had to kind of try and support the family, which was proving increasingly difficult because, you know, factory jobs pay virtually nothing, especially in the Northeast. And as a result of the stress of these 2 incidents, Gascoigne began to develop obsessive compulsive disorder and twitches, and was taken into therapy, but soon quit the therapy sessions after his father expressed doubts over the treatment methods. That's not good.
Yeah.
Early signs of mental health issues when you are so stressed that you begin to develop like physiological responses to that stress. That's really
not
bad.
good at all.
And then when your dad's like, but don't do that. I'm doing a Lancashire accent now. Don't listen to them, son. It's not going to work. So that's
is that what happened, or were they like giving him electroshock therapy, and he was like, "Don't do that."
I don't think it was electroshock therapy. I think it was kind of new age approach.
So it was like talking about
therapies. Yeah. So they talk to him like, lad, you don't need to be talking to anyone about your problems. Like,
bottle that shit up and
just go down the pub, talk to someone there. Gascoigne developed an addiction to slot machines to cope with the various things that were going on in his life. Yeah, that's not a good thing to be addicted to. Frequently spending all of his money on them, and then as a result of that, he began starting to shoplift to fund his addiction. He experienced further tragedy when another friend, whom he'd encouraged to join Newcastle United from Middlesbrough, died whilst he was working for Paul Gascoigne's uncle on a building site. That's a lot of death early on in life.
2 friends that died.
2 friends. Yeah, okay. His dad's now got some sort of serious illness going on. He's got an addiction. He's not even 18 yet. He's addicted to gambling, and he's developed compulsive twitches and obsessions. That's really not good.
That is a rough start.
That is a very rough start. Gascoigne decided to provide financially for his entire family, his parents and 2 sisters, as he saw professional football as a way of earning more money than the rest of the family was capable of in the rest of their entire lives, which is true. And this happens a lot in sports. You know, a lot of people look after their families after a certain amount of time. He enjoyed football and later wrote, "I didn't have twitches or have to worry about death when I was playing football." That is fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's a common thing when you can get into something that you're really into and all of it else just melts away and you get to be
Yeah,
just normal.
I completely agree. I have similar things in my life, but to be haunted by the specter of death so much that you throw yourself into football, it's like you need to get help for that.
Yeah.
He was signed on as an apprentice at Newcastle on his 16th birthday. Gascoigne regularly ate Mars bars and other junk food instead of breakfast most days. His diet was terrible. He did not eat like an athlete. Even back in the 80s, they had like diet regimes for people. Like, please don't drink before a game. Please don't eat refined sugar for breakfast. Yeah. Please
Yeah.
don't eat Mars bars for the love of Christ. Newcastle manager and World Cup winning player Jack Charlton was not overly concerned, as he believed the weight that Gascoigne had gained gave him extra strength on the football pitch and did not seem to slow him down. And that's true. Even after numerous injuries later into his career, Gascoigne was surprisingly fast for a man who was, let's say, stout. Let's use a word like that. Chubby has been thrown around. I think that's a bit harsh, but he was a big lad.
Sometimes that forward momentum can really get you
Yeah.
going a little faster.
I think it's like the early Babe Ruth stuff. It's like Babe Ruth was quite nimble in his early days, but he was a big dude. But that's, again, like you say, it's the momentum thing, isn't it? You know, when that train gets moving, it's fucking hard to stop, you know? He also noted that Gascoigne showed early signs of being gaff prone and a bit of a prankster. Now, that's a fucking understatement. You'll get to that later. Charlton warned Gascoigne about his junk food diet and gave him 2 weeks to lose the extra weight. Gascoigne then trained for 10 days straight, wrapped in a bin bag.
Ew.
So, yeah, he was doing that
That'll
early.
dehydrate you.
Yeah, that'll lose some water weight real quick, and it worked. Gascoigne captained Newcastle's youth team to the FA Youth Cup in 1984 to 85 and scored twice in the 4-1 victory over Watford in the final at Vicarage Road. In the first leg of the final, they drew 0-0. Teammate Joe Allen stated that Newcastle were unusually poor in the first leg, but in the second leg, Gascoigne came alive and was instrumental in the victory. After the match, Jack Charlton told Gascoigne that he would join the first team the next day against Norwich. Gascoigne did travel to Norwich, though Charlton chose not to play him because he was fucked. Basically, he played the day before and he was just full of Mars bars. So
it's a little sluggish.
Yeah, I'm making my first team debut. I better get a good breakfast in. She eats 5 Mars bars. Gascoigne made his first team debut as a substitute for George Riley in a 1-0 win over Queen's Park Rangers on the 13th of April 1985 at St James's Park. Amazing stadium in the northeast of England. It's really quite spectacular. It's on top of a hill. It's really prominent, really quite amazing. Charlton later noted that Gascoigne's first team appearances under him were too brief to suggest he was more than a useful talent. That's Jack Charlton being a bit of a dick, to be honest. At the age of 18, Gascoigne signed a 2-year contract, £120 a week at Newcastle, with the club also having a further 2-year option clause. Now, even at the time, that's a low wage.
Okay.
But it's like his childhood club, and like he's still quite young. He's got promise, but he's not proven anything. So he was probably willing to stick it out because of those factors. And also, like, he never seems to be a guy who is like about the money at any point in his life, because he's experienced the real lows, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
So money is less important than happiness, I think, at this point.
And that's the thing too. You were saying like he felt like a normal person while he was playing. So
yeah,
money's
exactly.
secondary. He just wants to play.
Yeah, just get him on the pitch and let him play.
Right.
He scored his first goal at home to Oxford United in a 3-0 victory on the 21st of September 1985 and claimed a further 8 goals in the 1985-86 campaign. Newcastle finished 11th in the First Division that season, and at the end of it, Gascoigne was featured on the front cover of the Rothmans Football Yearbook, which, like, those are, if you've got any of those lying around, UK listeners, those things are worth a fucking fortune. Sell them. My God, you'll be able to pay off a chunk of your mortgage. He scored 5 goals in 24 league games in the 86-87 season as the Magpies slipped to 17th place, 3 points above the relegation playoffs. In 1988, on the BBC programme Football Focus, Newcastle's then all-time top scorer, Jackie Milburn, stated that Gascoigne was the best player in the world. He wasn't, because Diego Maradona was still around and playing very, very well at this point, but he was definitely the best young player in the world. That is absolutely fair to say. In 0-0 draw with Newcastle at Plough Lane in February 1988. Hardman and future actor in various films such as Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and what was the other Guy Ritchie film that he followed with that Brad Pitt was in? I can't remember. Snatch. Love that film.
You like Dax?
And yes, and also you like Dax?
It's my favorite part.
I love that. And also X-Men 3, The Last Stand. He played, I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. That's Vinnie Jones.
Okay.
Yes. Vinnie Jones was a professional footballer before he became an actor. Hardman and future actor Vinnie Jones singled Paul Gascoigne out for special attention. And in an incident that would become a much publicized photograph, Jones walked backwards towards Gascoigne while looking forwards to avoid suspicion, grabbed him by the genitals and squeezed down really hard, leaving Gascoigne to scream in agony. And when the referee turned around, he was like, I don't know, something wrong with him. His balls just hurt. So yeah. If you Google an image, and I don't want to put it on screen because God knows we might get censored for it, but if you Google Paul Gascoigne, Vinnie Jones, you will see a picture of Vinnie Jones looking sternly ahead while squeezing Paul Gascoigne's nutsack, and Gascoigne going like that. It's really they're best friends now, so it's like they've laughed it off because they both had like really hard lives. So yeah,
Vinnie Jones, was he the one that was in Gone in 60 Seconds too?
Yes, yes, he was the speechless one in Gone in 60 Seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
scary.
Yeah, he is fucking terrifying. And you should have seen him play football. He kicked the shit out of everyone. Like back in the 80s and 90s, people were still quite dangerous on a football pitch, but Vinnie Jones was something else. He looked like he would kill you. And he probably did it. He probably would have done if you'd given him a weapon. So Paul Gascoigne was named PFA Young Player of the Year and listed on the PFA Team of the Year in 1987-88. However, his period at Newcastle coincided with a period of unrest and instability at the club, which left the club unable to hold on to such a gifted youngster. Paul Gascoigne promised Sir Alex Ferguson that he would sign for Manchester United. Ferguson, kind of safe in the knowledge that he was getting the best young player in the world, duly went on holiday to Malta, expecting to sign Gascoigne. While on holiday, he picked up a newspaper that said that Paul Gascoigne had signed for Tottenham Hotspur for a British record fee of £2.2 million. Quite... Yeah, exactly. Sorry, we've got a really cool comment here. Quite dangerous was an understatement. I played football back in the 80s. Yeah, football was a very different game back when I was a kid. You could kick people and kind of punch them and get away with it.
Punch them.
Not so much now. So Gascoigne signed for Tottenham for a British record fee of £2.2 million. In his 1999 autobiography, Ferguson claimed that Gascoigne was wooed into signing for Spurs after they bought a house for his impoverished family. Gascoigne in his autobiography states that after he was given his £100,000 signing on fee, he spent $70,000 of it buying and renovating a property for his mother and father. That is fucking adorable.
Yeah, it is. He bought his mum a house.
He bought his mum a house straight away, his mum and dad. Also, he was on £8,000 a week, which is quite a jump from £120 a week. To put that into kind of inflationary states for people who might be listening, that's $20,000 in today's money a week, which and also, you know, we $20,000, you know, athletes are on stupid money now, you hear about it, but like £8,000 a week back then bought you a lot of stuff. That's, you know, and actually being from where he was in the Northeast, you could have bought a row of houses for £8,000 at the time. You could have bought like 4 or 5 terraced houses. I'm not kidding.
That's a good come up.
Yeah, that is. Even when I went to university up there, you could still get like a terraced house for like £30,000. It's incredibly, the property is still cheap up there relatively compared to the rest of the UK. Basically, he looked after his family for the rest of his life just off his first contract. So that's really good for him. In his first season at White Hart Lane with Tottenham Hotspur, Gascoigne helped Terry Venables' Tottenham Hotspur team to 6th in the First Division, scoring 7 goals in 37 appearances. They rose to 3rd place in 89 to 90, but were still 16 points behind champions Liverpool. Yes. On the 26th of September, he scored 4 goals in a 5-0 victory against Hartlepool United in the second round of the 1990 Football League Cup. He was named the BBC Sports Personality of the Year in 1990, which is kind of like the highest unofficial honor you can get in this country as like a sport, as an athlete. Like in the past, you think about any successful athlete, like maybe it's a huge Olympian or a boxer, like Lennox Lewis has won it, or like, I guess, like multiple footballers won it, like golfers, Nick Faldo's won it, and like kind of big names in pretty much every sport that have existed have won this thing. It's a big honor. But he basically got it because of the World Cup. And at the World Cup, England got to the semi-final. Paul Gascoigne got booked playing against Germany, which meant that because he had a certain number of yellow cards, he couldn't play in the next game, which if England got through would have been the final. And he immediately burst into tears on the pitch.
Oh,
and and there's a famous clip of a striker called oh my god, I can't believe I've forgotten his name now. Oh Jesus. Anyway, striker went up to him. That's going to drive me mad. Went up to him and said, "Paul, are you all right?" Like it wasn't caught, like the audio wasn't caught on camera, but he put his arm around Paul Gascoigne's shoulder, and Paul just went, "Oh, I'm going to fucking kill someone." And then like, oh, it's Gary Lineker. Gary Lineker looked to where the manager was, which also happened to be the Horde Carrier, and just went like that. And everyone was like, yeah, maybe we need to get him off the pitch before he does like slide into someone. What's this? Just a side note, after football, I went on to karate in the late 80s. Wow, that is like an 80s transition right there. Karate. Holy shit. Yeah.
I feel like that's a lot of the 80s movies even in the US. Soccer and football and karate.
Football. Yeah, karate was so fucking big.
And fighting Russians.
Yes, Russians. Also, Russians and Nicaraguans invading the US. That was apparently a thing. Gascoigne was named on the PFA Team of the Year and helped Tottenham to reach the FA Cup final. He scored the opening goal of a 3-1 victory over Arsenal at Wembley with a free kick and one of the 6 goals he scored in the competition. Spurs at this juncture were under significant financial strain with a huge £10 million debt, which is the equivalent in today's money of $75 million. That's a big fucking debt, even by today's standards.
Yeah.
With Spurs being tied to massive debt, they had to hire a financial advisor called Nat Solomon. Solomon strongly urged for selling Gascoigne to Italian club Lazio to keep the vultures at bay. Going into the final against Nottingham Forest, Spurs had already accepted an offer from Lazio, and Gascoigne had already agreed the personal terms to join the Italian club. The deal will be worth £8.5 million to Tottenham, which would almost clear their entire debt. His final was to end in injury, however, as 15 minutes into the game, he committed a ridiculously dangerous knee-high challenge on Gary Charles and ruptured his own cruciate ligaments in his right knee. Not only did he injure Gary Charles, he injured himself with his aggression. Yeah, it was one of the gross. And actually, if he had injured himself, he'd have been sent off. The very fact that he didn't injure himself was one of the reasons he stayed on the pitch, amazingly. So, yeah, he missed the entire 91 to 92 season while he recovered, suffering a further knee injury in late 91 when he got drunk and slipped on beer in a nightclub in Newcastle. Yeah, kept him out for even longer. His nightlife problems are starting to become like a bit of an issue at this point. It's the start. We'll get to the rest later. The saga over Gascoigne's proposed transfer of Lazio dominated the tabloid press throughout 1991, often overshadowing the key national news of the time, namely the recession and rise in unemployment. People were still talking about Paul Gascoigne when people were losing their jobs, although the broadsheet newspapers generally kept the stories to the back page, so it wasn't like, oh, look, we're losing money, but also Paul Gascoigne's gone out to a nightclub. And eventually the transfer was completed. And Terry Venables, speaking at the time, the deal with Lazio, agreed, "I'm very pleased for Paul, but it's like watching your mother-in-law drive off the cliff with your new car." So that's an interesting way of putting it.
I guess, yeah.
Gascoigne eventually joined. Yeah. It didn't quite work out, though, because Gascoigne eventually joined Lazio for a fee of £5.5 million So that's 3 million less than they initially agreed because his fucking knee exploded.
He was running around slipping on beer and shit.
Yeah, he's running out, getting pissed. That's not going to change when he gets to Italy. That's the equivalent to £15 million in 2022, about $17 million. He received a £2 million signing on fee and signed a contract worth £22,000 a week, which is $46,000 a week in today's money. A huge sum of money.
That is not too bad.
That is not bad. And again, 1990, £22,000 a week. You can buy the planet. You can buy a country for that money. That's crazy money. He failed to fully settle in Italy and was beset by negative media interest, which was not helped by the numerous occasions he punched reporters. He was basically Tommy Lee and Bjork combined at this point. So whenever an Italian journalist approached him, he would try and kill them. He was kind of a bit out of his tree with like very strange decision making at this point.
See, you gotta mind your own business. You leave them alone.
Do not approach this man. This man will punch you. And then there was a time when an Italian journalist had the temerity to approach him and ask him how he felt at being left out of the starting team when they were playing Juventus, sorry. And his response was to burp into the microphone on live television. He was fined.
Not refined.
No. He was fined £9,000 for that, making it the single most expensive burp in human history. So
I feel that's money. It's worth it.
Yeah, do whatever you want. Sometimes violence is effective, according to Pythos. I mean, I guess so. But if you're getting fined for burping into a microphone, probably don't punch journalists, because if you get fined $9,000 for burping, imagine what a fist in the face will cause. It's funny, it's interesting. He was really well liked by the club's fans because they were the team had a generally like working class group who, they loved his carefree working class aura that he had because he just didn't care about anything. Just do whatever the fuck he wanted. But the club's owner, Sergio Cragnotti, kind of resented him for this, but also resented him because when he first met Paul Gascoigne had been learning Italian, and he did surprisingly well. He learned Italian quite quickly. And the first thing he said to the owner was, "Tua figlia, grande tette," which roughly translates to, "Your daughter, big tits."
That's the way to make an impression.
That's the way you make your impression. Oh, you're paying my salary? Oh, your daughter's got enormous tits. Paul Gascoigne is an absolute fucking idiot. He broke his cheekbone whilst on international duty in April 1999. That's one injury I never want to experience. And had to play the remaining games of the season in a mask, which made him look like a drunk Phantom of the Opera, basically. running around drunk, sliding into people, trying to take their knees out, looking like a psychopath. Lazio ended the campaign in 5th place, which was considered a success as it meant qualification for European competition for the first time in 16 years. And the majority of that is because of Paul Gascoigne and his absolute ridiculous play. He was just, when I point this out, he was an incredible footballer, but he was a danger to himself and other people around him at this point. He fell badly out of shape before the 93-94 season and was told by the manager, Dino Zoff, to lose 2 stone, about 28 pounds, by the start of the campaign, or else he would lose his first team place. Gascoigne, who had no ego about stuff like, how dare he say this, I'm the star player, went on an extreme weight loss diet and succeeded in shedding the excess weight and another 2 pounds in the space of like a month and a half.
Dude, that's not even healthy.
That's scary. That's like UFC weight cut kind of levels, to be honest with you.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of weight. Zlatan kicks people in the head for fun, then getting interviewed. Still, he is obsessed by Taekwondo. That's true. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, who is a giant of a human being at 6'5", still does kick people in the head to this very day and gets away with it because it's Zlatan Ibrahimovic. There's this aura of personality in professional sports. Sometimes people get away with stuff because of who they are. So, yeah.
I feel like if you're 6'5", you might accidentally kick people in the head.
And he's also very agile. So yeah, that's likely to happen when you just lift your leg up. Back to Paul Gascoigne. In one spell out injured, Dino Zoff told Paul Gascoigne to go on holiday to recuperate, which actually is kind of like a nice thing to do. But unfortunately, the last thing you should do is give Paul Gascoigne free time, because Gascoigne explained to Zoff that he didn't want to go on holiday, but Zoff made him go. To the surprise of nobody at Lazio's fitness staff, Gascoigne arrived back from holiday grossly overweight because he'd been eating fucking Mars bars the whole time. In 1994, Zdeněk Zeman arrived from Foggia as a coach for Lazio, and Gascoigne hated him. Zeman was a coach noted for his use of whistle in training sessions. So not just like end of action, right now I want to talk to you. He would whistle all the fucking time, like he's at some sort of pilled up lunatic at a rave or something. It's the whistles going off everywhere. Gascoigne did not like this. One session, Zeman had found that he'd misplaced his whistle, couldn't find it anywhere, searched everywhere. Eventually, he went out onto the field and found that it was around the neck of an overly aggressive goose who frequented the Lazio training ground. That was Paul Gascoigne.
That's awesome.
Yeah, try and get your fucking whistle back now, you prick. This goose will peck your eyes out. In April 1994, he broke his leg in training while attempting to tackle Alessandro Nesta in another overly aggressive tackle. He needs to stop doing these. He keeps breaking his fucking legs.
And that was in practice, dude.
I know.
Back it off
Calm the fuck down. Yeah. Lev, you're a good storyteller. This is a good stream. Thank you so much for Billy. We're glad that you're joining us. Give us a follow and stuff. So he's broken his leg. And upon his recovery, he was disgruntled with the stern approach of Zerman and that fucking whistle of his. And both the club and player decided to part ways at the end of the 1994-95 season. He swiftly joined Glasgow Rangers in the Scottish First Division. Rangers manager Walter Smith flew to visit Gascoigne at his home in Italy, in Rome, in the countryside. He had a sprawling estate, which was near wine country, probably not a good location. Smith explained, he said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm here to see you." He said, "What is it you're wanting?" I said, "I'm here to see if you'll come and play for me at Rangers." He said, "Aye, all right." And that's the negotiation over.
There you go.
Yeah, this is pretty good. Gascoigne signed for Rangers in July 1995 for a then club record fee of £4.3 million on wages of £15,000 a week. He made an immediate impact in the fifth league game of the 1995-96 season, the old firm fixture between Celtic and Rangers. Now, Celtic and Rangers, basically one of the two of them always wins the league. There's nobody else has won the league but Rangers or Celtic in about, like 40 years at this point. Like, it's stupid. He scored a goal after running almost the full length of the pitch to get on the end of a pass in a breakaway move. It proved vital, as it was the only match that Celtic lost during the entire campaign, and they lost the entire season by 3 points because Rangers won one more game than them. So that one goal sealed the league. That's how fucking dominant these two teams were.
Damn.
On the 30th of December, Gascoigne was booked by referee Dougie Smith after picking up Smith's yellow card from the ground as he just dropped it and jokingly booking the referee during a match against Hibernian. Dougie Smith is a fucking killjoy.
Yeah,
bitch.
that's an overreaction. Kick him
Yeah,
out
that is
for
an
doing
overreaction.
something
He's
funny.
just fun. He's just being a prankster. Calm down. If you saw some of the pranks this guy does to other people, you might think he got off light. Rangers went on to win the Scottish Premier Division, clinching the title in the penultimate game of the season against Aberdeen at Ibrox. Gascoigne scored a hat-trick, including 2 solo efforts. Rangers won the double, as they also won the Scottish Cup by knocking out Celtic before beating Hearts 5-1 in the final. He scored 19 goals in 42 appearances in all competition and was named both PFA, Scottish Player of the Year, and the SWFA, Footballer of the Year. No idea what that is. 19 goals in 42 appearances for a midfielder and like a central midfielder. Like, he'll run forwards, but they do not score that many goals. Like, if you get 10 out of a central midfielder in a season, that's a good year. But 19, fuck me, that's a lot.
See, I have no idea how any of it works, so I appreciate you breaking that down.
Yeah, that's okay. So, like, to score a goal almost every other game, that would be a good return for a striker.
Okay.
Like, if someone right the way up front, but for someone in midfield to score that as well, that's really rare. Rangers won the title again in 96-97, their 9th in succession. Gascoigne claimed hat-tricks against Kilmarnock and Motherwell and ended that campaign with 17 goals in 34 games, another really good return. However, during the season, manager Walter Smith and assistant Archie Knox became increasingly concerned over Gascoigne's reliance on alcohol to get him through the season. The Gers won another double when they beat Hearts in the final of the Scottish League Cup 4-3, with Gascoigne scoring twice and Ali McCoist claiming the other 2 goals. They were both close friends and unfortunately heavy drinking buddies. So
now, do you think he's drinking just because he's young and crazy and athletic, or he just hurts from breaking himself?
At this point, he's no longer young. At this point, he's like 27, 28. So you're not a kid anymore. You're a man with a family. Kind of need to, and it was getting to the point where he would drink so much that he couldn't train the next day because he was being violently sick. So he wouldn't train, and then he'd show up on match day and just put in these beautiful performances. And that was not going to last forever. Verbilly, yes, I don't stream anymore, but I got followers. Yes, please do host us. That would be wonderful. Thank you. If you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd love a little host. That'd be wonderful. Gascoigne. So, however, going back to him at Rangers in 1997, young Italian player Gennaro Gattuso joined Rangers. He was welcomed to Ibrox by Gascoigne, who took a massive dump in one of Gattuso's socks as a prank. Welcome to the club, kid.
That's worse than fake booking the ref.
Oh, yeah. That's like, and that's the standard you will soon find out from this guy. In a game against bitter rivals Celtic, Walter Smith begged Gascoigne to translate into Italian the instructions that he didn't want the Italian to get booked because Gattuso was a bit dirty. He told him to calm down and to not get himself into trouble in the game, otherwise they would lose. Gascoigne proceeded to tell Gattuso the exact opposite, just for shits and giggles, which resulted in Gattuso. He told him to do exactly what he was doing in training, which was kicking the shit out of everybody. Resulted in a flying leg kick to the sternum of a Celtic player within 30 seconds. Fucking Street Fighter level.
Oy.
Fucking, yeah, like straight through the fucking air. He was sent off, banned for 3 matches, but protested because he said he was just doing what the manager told him. No, you weren't. Gascoigne tricked you, you poor sod.
Yeah, that's the worst translator ever.
He's a bit of a prick, isn't he? However, Gascoigne would also buy Gattuso his club suits, because at this point in time, they always had to show up wearing suits. They couldn't just walk in wearing,
right.
What was it? The kind of shit that they get sponsored by Nike to wear and all that stuff now. They didn't wear those. They had to wear suits everywhere they went. So Gascoigne bought all of the club suits under the pretense that Rangers were paying for them. Gattuso didn't find out until months later that Gascoigne had dropped nearly £1,000 on multiple suits for this kid and never asked for anything in return. Never asked for the money back. Never even told him. Just bought in these suits and told the tailor to say that Rangers had bought them for him.
Well, that's nice of him.
He's nice. This is the weird thing. He's either nice or terrifying.
Yeah, just don't get on his bad side.
Laugh
at his jokes.
Don't
get mad when he shits in your locker
for a drink. Yeah, exactly. If he shits in your sock, just maybe take it away. Don't go at him, otherwise you might get headbutted. In January 1998, Gascoigne courted serious controversy when he mimed playing the flute. That might not sound like much, but we'll get to it now. Symbolic of the flute playing Orange Order marches while warming up as a substitute during an Old Firm match at Celtic Park. Now, Rangers Football Club are a mostly Protestant club. Celtic are a mostly Catholic club.
Okay.
And he was deliberately stoking sectarian violence, which these clubs had very close ties to communities in Northern Ireland. And at this point in time, Northern Ireland, the tensions are huge. The IRA are still incredibly active and bombing people across the UK. Major cities killing people. The political assassinations are still being attempted, at this point. So it was a very dangerous thing, and people are dying by the dozen at this point. And he decided to stoke sectarian violence by miming the flute that Orange Order marches do, which are hugely controversial things that still take place in Scotland, and there's riots and stuff. It's really bad. It's like, imagine, I mean, I can't really compare them to the KKK, but it's that level of animosity.
Right.
So,
yeah, you don't want to. Yeah.
you know, that kind of march. You know,
that's not a nice thing to do.
No, that was. I think he'd already made the gesture during a goal celebration shortly after joining the club in 1995, and claimed that he was ignorant of the meaning. But I don't buy it. I think he was doing it to rile at the fans and the other club. I think it was like a gamesmanship thing.
That would be kind of like running into, like, scoring a touchdown and then throwing up a Hail Hitler thing.
Yeah, it's not far off. You know, it's like it's a deliberate provocation, and to claim ignorance is not a good excuse. Anyway, he was fined £20,000 by Rangers after the incident, so that's like a week and a half's wages. It's a fair chunk of change. He also, unfortunately, as a result of his stupidity, received actual death threats from IRA members and had to have security guards as a result of it. Not good when the IRA want to kill you. That's kind of not a good place to be. The 1997-98 season was less successful. Gascoigne scored just 3 goals in 28 games and was sold on, while Rangers failed to win any trophies after he departed, losing the league title to Celtic and the Scottish Cup final to Hearts. From here, his club career takes a massive slide. He gets paid lots of money because of his reputation and his international standing, but his injuries start to stack up. He does really stupid things and gets himself injured, like he elbowed an opposition midfielder, George Boateng, in the head, and Boateng was fine, but Gascoigne broke his arm. So, that's that. He does these things, and it ends up injuring him. I don't know why he keeps doing them. It should also be noted that he's an England legend at this stage in his career. I mentioned the crying incident earlier on, which showed like his real passion for his country. He's got, I think it's 58 caps for his country and about 20-something goals. Again, a huge return for a central midfielder. He also scored a legendary goal in the Euro 1996 group stages against Scotland and celebrated it by lying down on the floor with his arms out and his head slightly raised as his friends, his teammates ran up, grabbed their water bottles and sprayed his face and mouth with water. A week earlier, the paparazzi had caught him and his England teammates out in a nightclub getting absolutely hammered, and they all lifted him in the air and poured booze into his mouth. So he was reenacting this thing. It should also be pointed out that paparazzi thing, they caught him doing that 24 hours before an international fixture, getting champagne poured down his throat. So he did not give a shit about turning up drunk to these guys. He is too much of a partier. Gascoigne married his long-term girlfriend. We're going on to his personal life now. He married his long-term girlfriend, Cheryl Fales, in Hatfield, Hertfordshire in July 1996 after they'd been together for around 6 years. He later admitted to violence towards Cheryl during their marriage. They divorced in early 1999. In 2009, Cheryl published a tell-all book entitled Stronger, My Life Surviving Gaza. That's not a good title for a book, really, when you're Paul Gascoigne. They have a son together, and he adopted Cheryl's 2 children from her first marriage. So never any complaints about him as a father, but no, not really a great husband, unfortunately. In November 2008, Gascoigne was faced with bankruptcy over a £200,000 tax bill that he had not paid. He hadn't even filed tax returns for more than 2 years. And on the 25th of May 2011, he avoided being declared bankrupt by the High Court in London, despite still owing £32,000. He sold off a bunch of memorabilia to kind of get that paid off. It's the O.J. Simpson way, only, Gascoigne sold it instead of stealing it.
Right.
At gunpoint. In Gaza, my story, and in Being Gaza, Tackling My Demons, he refers to treatments he had for bulimia, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, and alcoholism. The books also describe his addictive personality, which has led him to develop addictions to varying severities to alcohol, cocaine, chain smoking, gambling, high caffeine energy drinks, exercise, and junk food. Literally everything other than sex he was addicted to.
I feel like if you drop cocaine off of there.
Yeah.
I can really relate with this guy.
No, I think a lot of these have been, it's interesting because certain things he found easier to drop. Alcohol, he could never get off. High caffeine energy drinks, he got off because there was a risk of having a heart attack. He drank them so much that he was approaching a heart attack thing. Junk food thing, that's just like, lack of education, I think, from a young age and being signed as a young footballer and just like, oh, I'll eat shit for breakfast, that's it. But chain smoking, gambling, alcohol, cocaine, a lot of those are coping mechanisms. I mean, all of them are coping mechanisms, but I think certainly some of that is. There's more to come. Sorry, it gets sadder before it gets happier. Since retiring from football, Gascoigne has entered rehab for alcohol 8 times and been arrested multiple times for drunk driving, drug possession, assault, and even sexual assault, which he was cleared of. But when you look at the case and his admissions, he probably shouldn't have been cleared of it. His friends and family have tried to pull together around him and help him financially and help him get through rehab the multiple times he's been in. But at the age of 55, which he is now, he looks 20 years older than that, and his speech is basically constantly slurred. He sounds like Ozzy Osbourne because of the alcohol abuse he's put his body through over the years. And actually, they were saying, coupled with the fact that he was an exercise addict, he basically dehydrated himself in 2 different ways and nearly killed his liver by doing that. Yeah,
that'll happen.
In an effort to end this on a high note, I want to talk about some of Paul Gascoigne's legendary pranks. And there's a lot. I've just picked a few, and there's still like shitloads of them. Gazza had established himself in Newcastle's first team by the time Peter Jackson signed from Bradford in 1986. Jacko was given a brand new sponsored car from a Vauxhall dealership. He was the first player to have a company car, former defender John Anderson tells FFT. One day, when Gazza was out injured and everybody else was training, he tucked a fish into the underside of the passenger seat, and the fish rotted. The smell got worse, but Peter didn't know where it was coming from. The whiff was unbearable. He kept taking the car back to the garage, but they couldn't find the source until one day it went for a full valet, and the bottom of the seat fell out, and thousands of maggots were left in the place of where the fish had been.
Yeah,
that's the level of pranking we're dealing with here.
That's straight out of Grumpy Old Men. That's Gustafson.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, there's more. Mirandinho was the first Brazilian to play in England when he joined Newcastle in 1987 and quickly became mates with Paul Gascoigne. That was a mistake, as well as the victim of several japes. During my first trip with the squad, we were coming back from Norwich, and it was normal procedure to stop for fish and chips, Mirandinho told the newspaper. It was taking longer than usual for that to happen. So Gazza told me to go and tell the manager, Winnie McFowle, and say, Mr. Winnie, I'm fucking starving. I went to the front of the bus, said exactly those words, and everyone burst out laughing. I was fined as a result. Gascoigne also duped me into telling the squad that the English word for Wednesday was wank day. Then borrowed my car and crashed it into a field. The next day, Mirandinho said he asked for his car back. Gazza took him to it, stuck in a fence with the back wheel nearly touching the front wheel. That's a bad fucking accident. Damn. He's a crazy bastard at this point. One evening, that's not a prank. That's theft. It's theft and motor damage. One evening, Julian Dix tried to get me to sneak into town and go to the pub, and I didn't feel like it. They were sharing a hotel room at this point, and Gascoigne said that he went on and on. He wouldn't let me go to sleep. He kept trying to get me to go into town to go and have a pint. The next day, when he was asleep, I got my own back. I bought some fireworks and went into his bathroom, lit a banger, and set it off. The noise was incredible. I rushed into his room shouting, "Evacuate, evacuate, bomb blast, bomb blast." Julian Dix jumped up and ran out into the corridor completely stark naked and ran downstairs to the lobby.
That's a bit. It got out of hand.
It did. It really did get out of hand. And
I'm tripped out by all these last names though. There's Julian Fails, Dix. And this guy's Dix, and this.
Yeah. quite a lot of really funny names. I went in. So when Gascoigne was en route to training, he drove past a zoo. This is going to go badly. I went in and said, "Hi, I'm Paul Gascoigne. Can I borrow an ostrich, please? I'd like to take it to training." Yeah. And they let him. I put on a number 8 shirt. I put a number 8 shirt on the ostrich and drove it to the training ground with it in the back seat. It had a neck like Steve Sedgley. That's harsh. I waited until the lads were on the pitch warming up and then said, "Guys, I've got a new player for you," and sent the ostrich out. The lads were running side to side and the ostrich was chasing them down behind them, doing the exact same thing. But the worst thing was the lads finished training at 1 p.m. I didn't finish until 5 p.m. Have you ever tried to catch an ostrich?
It's got his own self, huh?
It's your fault. You got to take care of it now. And
think of the clout you have to just swing into a zoo and be like, "Hey, let me get an ostrich.
Can I have an ostrich, please? I'm Paul Gascoigne." "Yeah, Gazza, you can have an ostrich. Don't get it too drunk." Yeah. And it gets weird. I mean, there's a load more, but at the start when you have like these, like when the lineups for any sport is announced, and you'll have maybe like a talking head where they'll say like so and so and which college they played for, say if it's the draft or something like that, or they'll like maybe in some sports they'll walk towards the camera and like cross their arm and do like blue steel, like that sort of thing. That's what they wanted them to do in the 1990 World Cup. And they wanted the players to mouth their names so that the announcer would then say their name, like in the stadium and on the TV. And it was kind of like it was a clever gimmick. So they had to mime their own name without actually saying it. So Gascoigne was told to do that, and he mouthed "fucking wanker" to the camera. And he hoped no one noticed. And guess what? Nobody did, because it was in Italy. And it was sent to all the broadcasters around the world who just assumed that it had been checked. And his mime swearing was seen by over 1 billion people worldwide, going, "Fucking wanker."
That's a good one, though. Well played, sir.
Yeah. During his time in Italy, Gasser was given his own personal security guards in Rome. A great idea until one of them mistook him for a burglar and pointed a gun at his head. Eventually, he managed to talk them down. I was like, no, listen to me accent. I'm not a burglar. They did, on one occasion, prove to be useful. All of Lazio's bodyguards worked for Italy's leading security firm, who also looked after the country's money, said Gascoigne. "When I found out that their job was guarding a huge bank vault, I got them to sneak me in with Jimmy Five Bellies. I sat on this huge mountain of money, about £50 million, and started chucking wads of cash in the air. Eventually, I got bored and started throwing them at Jimmy." So,
oh, jeez.
Throwing huge chunks of change at his mate.
Okay. How I got to do that at some point in my life. I want to sit on a huge mound of money.
Just throw it. Money angel.
Yeah. I want a Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, you want to throw mountains of cash in the air. That is, he does have like the impulses of a child sometimes, but yeah, it is really interesting. "I'll take an ostrich. I'll take an ostrich, please." Yes, Ooh. Yeah.
See, now every time I hear ostrich, I immediately am thinking of that show Letterkenny.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched it, but
I have. I've heard of it.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. I know about that. So Dino Zoff was Lazio's manager when Gaza moved to Serie A and was permanently kept on his toes by his star man. One time he showed up naked in the hall of the hotel when we were away on a retreat. It was a yoga retreat, and Gaza was just running around naked. Then he did the same thing on the team bus. When we were going through a dark tunnel, he got undressed and sat next to Dino Zoff, who nearly jumped out of the seat.
Some of this stuff is hilarious, but weird.
Yeah. Some of it is hilarious, some of it's weird, some of it's dangerous, and this is these last two are kind of all three. I went to a posh restaurant and ordered lobster because I'd seen they had a massive lobster tank, he revealed. I pointed to the one I wanted, but they were taking so long. I thought, what are they doing? I'll just get it myself. So I dived into the tank in my best suit. It took me a while swimming around to catch the one that I fancied, but when I finally did, I hooked it out and said, "There's the fucker I want." Then I ate it in my dripping wetsuit.
Oh, geez.
So, wow. Yeah. That's an actual scene in the first Venom film, as I remember, when fucking Eddie Brock just sits in the tank of lobsters to cool down. And dead lobsters are one thing. A live swan is quite another, as former Rangers midfielder Ian Durant remembered. What is it with this guy and animals? We were playing golf at Loch Lomond when Gaza disappeared into some bushes and came out clutching a huge swan by the neck, said Durant. Don't ask me how he managed to catch the thing, but he got it into the car and it was attacking Ali McCoist.
Good Lord. See, he had practice catching an ostrich.
Yes, exactly. A swan's nothing when you've tackled a fucking ostrich. You might go down the park and see a swan from 20 yards away. It looks idyllic and looks majestic, the midfielder explained. 3 yards away, it's enormous and it's squaring up to you, looking for a fight. We were in the back of the Range Rover driving around at insane speeds, and it was chaos. The swan was going mad. It attacked Ali McCoist and caused £22,000 worth of damage to the car.
Ooh,
fuck
damn,
me, man!
That swan got busy.
Yeah, that's. I just want to end with like 3 stories I know that weren't included in these 50 that were listed that I only copied some over. Jimmy Five Bellies, Paul Gascoigne used to kind of semi-torture him a little bit. Like they came back drunk one night and they'd stopped off at a very famous place to get huge pies, like huge meat pies. Jimmy was off being sick in the bathroom, and Gascoigne opened his pie up, took the pie out, smeared the meat section in cat food and put it back in the pie crust, and then microwaved both pies. And he gave it to Five Bellies and said, "Oh, how's your pie, Jimmy?" He's like, "Oh, it's fucking delicious. Well, that's really nice. Is that the jelly? Yummy." So yeah, he made his mate eat cat food.
That's mean, man.
That's kind of mean, yeah. But he also supported his mate financially, so I guess he kind of felt he could. I don't think that's fair.
I feel like he's the Steve-O of soccer.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. And that's Paul Gascoigne. Quite a long one. I'm sorry I went on, but it was I've only covered like maybe 25% of his life. There's so much other stuff in there. Psychotic behavior, stupid pranks, drunken behavior. There was apparently he was out with radio presenter Chris Evans, not the actor, British radio presenter. And like he saw a bus driver, and the bus driver was like, "Hey, Gaza, nice to see you." And they were in Marble Arch, which is a very famous part of London, very narrow streets. And Gaza shook the guy's hand and then jumped into the bus driver's window, pushed him out of the seat, and drove a bus full of people around Marble Arch for 20 minutes in the center of London in rush hour.
This guy just lived jackass.
Basically, yes, he was jackass before that was even a thing.
Without cameras.
Yes, without the cameras. Although there was sometimes paps around, but he just did it for the fun of it. So I have to ask you your thoughts and rating for Paul Gascoigne as an idiot.
Well, I mean, I kind of like him. Like
I know he's another likable idiot, isn't he? To a certain extent.
I mean, the violence and possible assault and stuff, sucks. God, he was kind of dumb though, as far as like hurting himself constantly, and obviously it probably had a lot to do with drinking to excess and not taking care of himself. Yeah,
and also not looking. I guess counseling and psychotherapy wasn't really in that world, in his world at that time. But you just imagine if he'd not been such a psychopath on the football pitch and injured himself so much, and also gotten help for his demons, he would have played a lot longer and probably not be as like withered as he is now. I mean, it's really bad how old
I gotta hope that he would have at least pulled off some of the amazing pranks still.
Yeah,
because that's like my favorite part of this whole thing.
I know. As soon as I thought about it, I was like Paul Gascoigne, and then I remembered the multiple things he did. So kind of an amazing guy. It reminds me a little bit of Maradona in that he's one of these flawed geniuses who, couldn't really control his demons, but was like a majestic footballer, one of the greatest this country has ever produced, but has a real dark side that's never really been taken care of.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of like at a loss on what I'd even want to rate him. Like, if you were to rate him, what would you think? I'm gonna just steal your answer.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't kill anyone. Let's start right there. That's the metric that immediately brings it down to like into the 70s. he was reckless, and he was caring, but sometimes slightly cruel and vicious. It's the real dichotomy of man. I would probably be somewhere in the 70s because he did squander a lot of potential and could have maybe, I mean, the bankruptcy thing, he earned millions of pounds during and after his career, and he squandered it all. It's just,
Yeah, that is pretty dumb. So,
yeah.
well, I mean, not dumb like in a mean way. I'm not being mean to him.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd give him a fair C. A 76 seems good.
Yeah, I'll take a 76. He's a complex character as Paul Gascoigne, and it's kind of worth if anybody listens to this, like, just there are a number of different things you can view with Paul Gascoigne. You can view some of the interviews he did because he's incredibly charismatic in a frenetic, insane kind of way, but also some of his footballing highlights. Like, there are multiple different examples you can go online and search for. He was a magician on the football pitch and also a psychopath. But he's incredibly likable. And that's the thing with Paul Gascoigne, is that people will kind of let people like him get away with terrible or bad things because they are likable and people root for them. This guy came from nothing and built an incredible life for him, looked after his family, but at the same time didn't really look after himself. And that's the saddest part of all of this, is that if he just given some of the support he gave to everyone else to himself, he probably would have been in a better place.
Yeah.
Look after yourselves, people. That's the real story here, is as much as it's good to care for other people and try and help other people, charity starts at home. Look after yourself and then look after everyone else. Get yourself sorted, and then you can, make the world a better place. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I've really enjoyed. I really enjoyed researching this because he's such an interesting character, Paul Gascoigne. How was it, kind of looking into the darkest depths of the mafia for Mad Sam?
See, I always love looking into mafia stuff, and Casino's like one of my favorite movies. So when I found out that this guy was connected to Spilatra, I was like, oh yes,
I'll have some of that. Yes, I love Casino as well. That's a great film.
So no, I had a good time with it, and I always love when you're doing footballers because I don't know shit about them, so I learn all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I think the well with kind of insane football is kind of running a little bit dry at this point, because like there was a window from like the late 60s to like the late 80s where like glamour came into football. It was no longer like a working man's game and people started earning big money. But like at a certain point in the 90s, football became a bit more structured, civilized, less characters became available, less controversial figures. Really, to a certain extent, it just became more about making money and the brand and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like a sport like baseball still generates a lot of kind of random, insane, interesting people.
Yes, to a degree, but then they do stuff like ban him for just not liking him, even though he's acquitted for like this is a pitcher and I can't remember his name. So,
right, yeah.
So
I feel like
they keep him from being too crazy in baseball.
I think so. Certainly now. I think up until quite reasonably recently, there are still plenty of stories, and some of them featured on Netflix documentaries as well. But I do feel like sports, because of the nature of physical sport, when someone is physically gifted in a way that makes them almost superhuman, because some of these people do have superhuman reaction times, or speed, or strength, or like kind of in-game intelligence, like Kobe Bryant had like a basketball brain like nothing else.
Peyton Manning could read defense.
Peyton Manning,
a psychic.
Exactly. And that kind of level of physical ability, when you are almost seemingly superhuman, people put you on such a pedestal. But the problem is that a lot of these people who are physically developed may not have always had the kind of support or kind of, I guess, like life lessons that they should have had at that point that's made them stable as human beings. It's not always the case. I mean, someone like Pele, who is, in my mind, the greatest footballer of all time, is not really a controversial figure, because he was just like guy in Brazil, super poor, made it good, saved his money, didn't really do anything too controversial, you know. So there are examples out there of geniuses who aren't flawed, but
Right.
the vast majority of like geniuses in athletics, it always seems to come with a bit of an asterisk. You know, they either had addiction problems or personal issues, or were dangerous, or whatever it might be. There's always something there with these genius level people. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of the trauma and stuff and poorness and fighting
yeah.
their way out is just common amongst all the sports. Is the people that are driven to dive into and become professionals at sports. A lot of them are trying to get themselves out of horrible situations.
Yeah, as
And
Paul Gascoigne was, you know,
yeah,
and living with his entire family in one room, you know, that's like real grinding poverty, especially for like the late 70s. Like people were struggling in the 70s in this country, but I don't know too many that would have been like 5-6 people in one room. Like that's real bad poverty right there. So the sports thing is interesting, but it also gives rise to great things. For me personally, I actually think, and this is something that I've carried through life, is that the ability to communicate a message, a clear message to multiple people, is a far more impressive level of skill than anything you can physically do. Because as creatures, we are born to physically interact with the world around us and kind of, run away from danger and get away from this and lift this and move that and shit like that. But the ability to communicate well to masses of people, I find far more impressive than any physical feat you can possibly imagine. If someone can kind of impart knowledge and communication to people in a clear and effective way and really help and influence people, that to me is really impressive.
So like if some dudes had a podcast and taught people lessons about sorry.
No, but that's
shooting our horns here.
Yeah, we're pretty good at what we do. So that's kind of our show. This will be up almost immediately. Who's your favorite idiot yet? That's a very good question. I think mine's probably still for me personally, because I had so much fun covering him and talking about him. I would have to say, Christ, his name's gone. Oh my God, my brain. Rick James, bitch. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Rick James. It's so much fun talking about Rick James, and also one of our more popular episodes. What about you, Derek? Who's your favorite idiot?
That's what I was going to say. Like the favorite one that you've covered is definitely Rick James, because
I loved Rick James.
That story was amazing. I had no idea that he was so like interwoven with all these famous people and so batshit crazy.
So fucking crazy. It was amazing. But yeah, we have covered some really interesting people on this, and long will it continue. We aren't going anywhere. And if you'd like to follow us on our various social media ventures, you can go to @History's Greatest Idiots on Instagram. You can go to, or is that on Twitter? And @Greatest Idiots on Twitter. So so it's @History's Greatest Idiots on Instagram. It's @Greatest Idiots on Twitter. And if you go to let me just go patreon.com/History's Greatest Idiots. I had a real millennial moment there where I included the 3 W's. You can become our first ever Patreon. Please do that. We would really appreciate the help. And follow and subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube and all of the other places you can get podcasts. We do this every 2 weeks.
Throw reviews out there. I want to see I want to interact with people more.
Yeah, interact.
Put questions on there.
We put questions on our Spotify thing. So if you go on there, there's polls and questions and all sorts. So go and interact with those. We'd love to know your feedback.
That was a weird sound that came through on my side. You sounded like a scary alien person.
Oh, do I still sound alien and scary?
No, it was just real quick.
Okay,
it might have been somebody from another place trying to break through.
Oh no, it's the other project we're working on coming into our world. So that's our show for this week. So thank you all so much for joining us. Derek, would you like to say goodbye, please?
Bye, everybody.
And we will see you again in a couple of weeks. Take care now, everybody. Bye.